Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Beneath the Surface, where we focus on political, social and Islamic affairs. Today we'll be discussing politics and Islam. Joining us from Dearborn is the Islamic Lecturer, Najaf. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. It's my pleasure to be here once again. Thank you.
Let's start off with asking you, what is politics?
Well, politics is seen as the distribution of power of a government and a mass, and we're talking about the actual book definition of politics. So the way a country or a group of people or a government allocates its resources, whether it's army resources, strength, whether it's economic resources, whether it's lobbying, how a country allocates its power and its strength is politics. So it's really the play of power, what we do with power, where we take it and where we apply it. And it's using power to give ourselves strength and dominance over other people. So for example, if a government lobbies or a specific corporation lobbies a individual, a politician, in order for them to get the needs that they want, then that in itself is politics, because they have used their money as a source of power in order to get what they want from that individual. When a country invades another country, in order for them to establish a right or establish a corporation or take that country's resources, that is also the use of politics. So politics is really the distribution of power that people use in order for them to gain access over something that they need or something that they want. And it plays out in different parts. So in reality, media is politics, because media is used to establish that power. Money is politics, because money is used to establish that power. Wealth and armies is politics, because that's also used to establish that power. So the means that governments or people or politicians go through in order for them to establish that that power is politics. And it's used in so many different ways. Propaganda is one, campaigns is another, as we said, wealth, media, military power. These are all means of politics.
So how significant do you believe politics is to us? How significant is it in our life?
Well, as we noted earlier, if politics is the use and method in distributing power, and using power to gain or get access to that we want, then obviously politics plays a big role in the sense that we are able to get the things that we want that benefit our societies through politics. And I'm not just talking about ending wars. Ending wars is one idea. Ending wars, stopping wars is one thing, but there's a grassroots concept of politics. Through politics, you can change laws. Through politics, you can set different public policies and affect the policy-making standard, whether it's in America, UK, or any other country. When we're involved in politics and when we use politics, it allows us to change those policies that then are governing the government level, the state level, the law level, and we have that effect on people. I mean, we're talking about examples such as healthcare. We're talking about getting involved in things such as prisons and the prison system and getting to change that. We're talking about changing drug laws. We're talking about poverty, levels of education, welfare. All of these are political issues which affect our daily lives, whether we like it or not. Not only that, but that also then prevents the wars that we're trying to prevent, and that allows certain things to not happen. And then when we're talking about politics, we're really talking about everyday life, right? These are things that affect us daily, things that we can't get out of. And if we really want to make a difference there, then politics is the way to go. Because if we're not getting involved, then we are not an active part of that power dominance. We are not an active part in distributing that power. Now, power is not negative. Power is very positive, but if not distributed properly, and if it's not facilitated properly, it can get into the wrong hands. And that's where you've got lobbyists that come in. That's where you have certain corrupt politicians who are willing to receive millions of dollars to make certain laws or change certain laws in order for them to get what they want or to benefit the corporation or to benefit their pockets, without really understanding the laws themselves. So when people take part in public policy, when people take part in lawmaking, when people take part in legislature, all of a sudden you hear the people's voice is rising. Because when we say democracy, we're talking about the people. We're talking about the people's voices being heard. And politics is that voice that's being spoken. If the people don't get involved, their voice will never be heard. And that's really why politics is important.
You are stating that politics is very important. However, there are many Muslims who believe Islam and politics are not linked. Politics is not part of Islam. They believe doing extra prayer or supplication, for example, is more significant than protesting.
Well, I think that's a very it's a very hard mentality. It's a very skewed mentality, because it's very, very obvious the Prophet came, as much as he was a religious figure, as a political figure also. The Prophet came to destroy, as we said, an economic system. He came to destroy a political system. You've got not only males, but females. For example, Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad, was a lady who in all reality participated in political discussions. She was part of the Prophet's political movement towards the Christians when they did mubahala. As much as that was religious, there's a lot of politics in that, because it was over, you want to dominate, you want to put your power over ours. Let us discuss. Let us see, are we right? Are you right? And to take a woman with him shows a strong political sense. So the Prophet, his companions, the Imams, all participated politically in a system to create a government, to create, welfare for people, to allow people to live properly. Khumus, for example, or zakah, is a political tax system to help the poor. It's very similar to the tax system that we use today to pay for healthcare and social security, stuff like that. So it is there's definitely politics in Islam. And the way I would tell these people who think praying is better, we have this idea that religion is just all about mechanical movements. Religion works by practicality. Religion works by, for example, there's a religious Islamic law which says if a person's mother calls them because she needs his help, and it's salah time, the law is that he leaves his salah and he goes to his mother and then comes to pray. Why? Because there is more practicality in helping the mother than just praying, right? And prayer really begins once it ends. Ayatollah Khomeini has a beautiful quote. He says, prayer begins once it ends. And what he's saying is your true prayer begins once you come off the prayer mat. Islam is not for monkery, sitting and just praying. Islam is about participating, protesting, practically making changes. And that's really what it's about.
Many people are active in politics and are protesting for countries like Gaza, Iraq and Syria. However, politicians are not responding to the people. Why are the governments still supporting the enemy?
Look, as much as protesting helps, and as much as protesting gets our voices heard, there are legislatures and there are laws that are set in stone that are very hard to immediately remove by simply protesting. A protest is important, don't get me wrong. A protest gets people's voices to be heard. But these laws are not just going to change because you have superpowers who are backing these laws. That's why politicians aren't responding to us. They respond through payment. They respond through corporations that are lobbying them for millions of dollars, which are controlling their seats in order for them not to change what they think. And if we're not part of that power system within Congress, for example, within Parliament, within a certain legislature, if we don't have a voice, if people don't run for Senate, Representative, Congressman, then all of a sudden we feel like that voice isn't there. We feel like we're not heard. And if we're not heard, then as much as people might protest, thousands, millions might protest, yes, voices will be heard. But at the end of the day, those laws need to be changed or set in stone. And a protest will not just remove those laws. I'll give you a brief example. Gaza is one thing. Look at the recent things that happened in the FIFA World Cup. When FIFA came into Brazil, they changed laws completely in the country. They got leaders to infiltrate the government. Brazil in 2003 ordained a law that drinking alcohol is not allowed in the stadiums because people were dying, murders were happening, etc. So what they did in 2003 is they decided that they're going to ban the law that no one can drink in a stadium, and that was the rule. When FIFA came in for the 2014 World Cup, Budweiser was one of the biggest sponsors. So Budweiser had to play it smart, where they had to sell alcohol in stadiums. They infiltrated the government. They got people to go in. They changed a law, which very clearly had a positive effect on the people. Alcohol was sold in stadiums because Budweiser is one of the biggest sponsors. Because Budweiser has millions of dollars, they were able to lobby those politicians in order for them to change the laws. As much as the people protested, people were in the streets fighting. People were in the streets trying to say, look, we don't want these laws. We don't want to spend millions of dollars on stadiums. We are already a very poor country. Nobody heard them because the politicians had already been making the shots, you know? And unless we have people who are journalists, politicians, congressmen, individuals who are moral, who are coming out and making a stance within the law-changing system, public policymakers, unless we have those people, it's going to be very hard to make a difference. Yes, protests are important, but there are much higher steps to take than that.
However, you mentioned politics is power, and protests can bring people power, which is how the South African liberation movement began. Also, the Arab Spring protesting was the reason for bringing down the government in Egypt.
There's a difference between protests and revolutions. It depends on the scale. When we talk about a revolution, we're talking something much past a protest, where you have a whole country who comes out and says we're fed up with it. If you look at, for example, the Egypt revolution, you had millions of people coming into Tahrir Square and waving the Egyptian flags, right? Burning down places. Obviously, there was a riot at some points and a lot of chaos took place, but revolution is what's needed. The army took part of it. The army was a big part of it. There was politicians who took part of it. There were political parties who took part of it. We're talking about a whole country's upheaval and revolution. There was planning made and put for this. This didn't happen overnight. There were people working in the government to make this revolution happen. There was a lot of change that happened. When we're talking about protests, yes, a protest happens. We might, be talking about 10,000 people. 1,000 people, if we're lucky, we'll get 1,000 people. I know some protests where to protest Daesh and the killing in Iraq, you had maybe 500 people, 1,000 people, which is sad. Because as much as you want that to change, that small group of people can only do so much. A revolution is very different. A revolution is where you have planning in advance with government officials, politicians, a lot of money being pumped into the system, the army coming over and saying, look, there has to be a big change. The reason why revolutions sometimes spark, the protests in Syria, for example, or the protests in certain countries were sparked into revolutions because the protesters were killed. Martyrdom causes protests, causes revolutions. We see protests happening all the time. People don't just get up and cause revolution. But when people are killed in a protest, innocent people, that's when revolutions happen. For example, when the leaders would then kill the protesters, they had enough of the bloodshed. They immediately rose and they caused a revolution. A protest is one thing, and a revolution is another. Protests do help, and they can lead to revolutions, but they need large numbers and a lot of planning. And there needs to be a systematic overhaul of that specific government, and that's very hard to do unless you set yourself politically within government, within certain parts of parliament or Congress or whatever. It's going to be very hard for you to make that political change that you want. And there are a lot of ways. Unfortunately, sometimes when people do protest, they're positive, but some people end up coming out, trashing things, destroying things. A lot of violence takes place. Women are hurt, children are hurt, men are hurt. And as much as we want to, protest, we want to make sure that the violent method is not used. We want to make sure that these are peaceful protests, protests that are organized, that are set, where we are not harming anyone, we are not killing anyone, we are not forcing, this is not a French Revolution that we're trying to recreate once again. Not at all. We want peaceful protests where our leaders realize that they need to listen to our ideas. And the best way to do it is to go within the law system and try to change those laws to help the people who are in need.
Please explain to us the present sorry state of affairs in the Muslim world. Why is there so much bloodshed?
Well, look, the thing is that where do you start? There is a lot of bloodshed, regardless of what's happening in Syria, what's happening in Iraq, what's happening in Burma, what's happening in Bahrain, in these different countries, that are in Palestine specifically, what's happening with Gaza, the killing of innocent people, and that's also happening in these different countries. But if we take a step back for a second, and we see the bigger picture, there's something much greater that's happening at large here, because what's at stake, what's at large is not just the bloodshed. What's at large, this has been happening for the past 100 years, okay? Because war benefits those specific individuals who are trying to make as much money as possible. The war industry is not a very cheap industry. The war industry costs millions of dollars, and millions of dollars are funneled every year. Take an example of America. America spent $800 billion on war just within the last 3 or 4 years. Now, why is that happening? That's their budget. The reason that's happening is because when you create wars, manufacturers must supply those weaponry to someone. And because those manufacturers are making money, the war drums and the war propaganda will always rise and come up because it benefits their pockets, right? Our public policy in America and the public policy of many countries, which is kill and destroy, has not helped anyone. This policy of killing, America has not become a more safe place ever since its policy to invade Iraq and to invade Afghanistan. We've had many more attacks. There's been a threat which is created, which is Al-Qaeda. Now you have Daesh. You had Jabhat al-Nusra, which started as a branch of Daesh, and then you had, for example, of Jabhat al-Nusra a split, and then Daesh, ISIS was created. These are all the Frankenstein children of the so-called American dream. These are the Frankenstein children of years of war and innocent people killing, because war is never justified, right? War is never ever justified. And when you kill and you shed blood, more will come after you. So our police state, and specifically I say America, our public policy has worsened our security than helped it. The more wars that we engage in, the more attacks that are happening on our soil, the more terrorists that we have, the more people that are being killed all over the world. And this public policy needs to end because it does not help. We're talking about a mass public policy which is there to benefit those corporations who are making a lot of money from war. When a country invades and goes into war, they A, get access to resources. They too, corporations, private corporations make a lot of money. We're talking about mercenaries and individuals who are selling weaponry. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry that's being lobbied today, right? And it's sad that it's being lobbied because politicians are getting paid top dollar in order for them to support war so certain individuals can benefit from war. And that's a big problem. And we are being played in the Middle East on that end. Now, when you have a decapitated people, it's not very hard to start war among them. And what I mean by this is when you have people who are poor, people who have very little education. I mean, I'll tell you, when I went to Iraq, and I was walking, in the streets of Iraq, I wanted to find people who are educated. Specifically, you will find them in Baghdad, but it's very hard to find them in other areas. Not because they're not there, but because education has not been emphasized enough, right? When you've got a people who are not educated, who are poor, who don't have the basic necessities of life, we're talking healthcare, water, security, electricity, these people will do anything in order for them to survive. And when a human enters survival mode, there is nothing he will not do. Survival mode is one, and you've got religion on the other side. So when a country plays on those strings of lack of need, of lack of security, right? Where there's no water, there's no electricity, there's no food, people will do anything. They will kill for a couple $100. They will ransack and destroy for a couple $100. And don't forget the whole religious aspect. Religion then comes as a very big pivotal point in why things are happening in the Middle East. We are being played with a Shia-Sunni string in order for us to be divided and to be conquered. This happened before in India. This happened before when Iraq was split from Syria and Lebanon. This whole idea of Syria, Lebanon never used to exist. It all used to be one country, the land of the Levant. And soon afterwards, when Britain came in, it was all separated. All these areas were separated and they became separate. So to divide and conquer is really the idea. And as much as I blame other countries, I cannot stop but blaming us because our skewed mentality of religion has influenced and has allowed other people to do this to us, right? Ayatollah Khomeini has a quote. He says, Muslims, Shias and Sunnis are fighting whether they should fold their hands when they pray or put their hands down when the enemy is devising plans to cut them. We have used religion, or others have also used religion and our misuse of religion to systematically take a group of people, make them think that they are better than one another. Let a Shia think he's better than the Sunni and the Christian, for example. Let the Sunni think he's better than the Shia, and boom, you have a fight. You have an argument that's going to break out. And religion really is there at the forefront to make it seem like there's a sectarian battle. That's just a cover-up. That is just a doll, the pretty doll for everyone to look at and say, look at these Muslims who are fighting amongst each other. In the background, there's a lot more economic and financial gains. Mind you, there's a lot of countries who are part of this. You've got Saudi, you've got Qatar, you've got America, all these countries who are taking part in these systems. And if we don't, set our foundations with regards to helping the people, helping them come out of poverty, educating the people, and setting them right on religion, this will only continue.
Why are the Arabian countries not helping the Arabians being killed around the world?
Well, we've lost that. The Arab countries used to be great. We used to have this Arabian pride where if an Arabian was hurt, you would help them. We used to have this thing where if an Arabian came to your house, in Arabia, they would sit at your house for 3 days. The Arabian custom in Saudi Arabia and all these countries is an Arabian would sit in your house for 3 days if he came to visit you, and you would not ask a single question as to why he is there. He would feed you, give you shelter, and give you to drink, and you would stay there comfortably for 3 days. This is Arabian culture. We used to be a great people. We used to be a people who overcame our egos. We were a group of people who, when we came to Spain, the Arabians, Spain was known to have the golden ages. We used to be a group of people who took our backs to give to other people. We were a people who invested in knowledge, in libraries, in mathematics, in science, in biology, in chemistry. We were a people who came from nothing. And when Islam came to us, we rose to a high level. Unfortunately, that's changed. This Arabian pride is no longer there. This helping another human is no longer there because now the dollar speaks. There are alliances which are created in the world, which it doesn't matter if you're Arabian, Muslim, non-Muslim. If you're part of this alliance, you are making money. And if you are making money, that's the most important thing. Human life is no longer worth something. A human life now today is very cheap. People are willing to take it and sell it, very easily. And our skewed mentality of religion is very wrong. It's ironic that Arabian countries think that it's great to have holy sites, right? It's great to have the Kaaba. It's great to have Mecca and Medina. But what's the point if your people are being killed all over the world? What's the point if the Muslims around the world are being butchered? What's the point if you've got children in Gaza being killed? Is religion used as simply a cultural tool or a tool of mechanic movements of ups and downs and rotations? Or is religion standard? Is religion morality? Is religion helping those in need? Is religion not allowing war? Is religion supporting your friends? Is religion not causing fitna and paying private terrorist groups to invade a country and to create rift and segregation and division because you want to benefit? That's not religion. Right? I'm not saying I know what religion is, but I know what religion is not. And religion is definitely not killing. Religion is definitely not war. Religion is definitely not crimes. Religion definitely is not putting your hands in the hands of those who are killers and mercenaries. That is not religion. And that's a big problem as to why the Arab countries might not be helping, because there's a strong push, which is at the end of the day is a very strong financial push. It's a financial need. And unless we awaken that, as we can say, Arabian within us that used to be there, things will move forward. Mind you, it's not only Arabia. America at one point was like that too. America at one point in Europe, and I'll speak specifically for America because that's where my field of expertise is in America because I live there. America at one point was the greatest nation in the sense that they would care for anyone who was in need. They overcame. When people moved to America, specifically Muslims in the early 1940s, they were greeted with open arms. They worked. Many of them moved to Dearborn, and that's why Dearborn has such a big Muslim population, because they have been there ever since the 1940s. They've been there for a long time, ever since Henry Ford and all these started, creating the industrial lines. People moved there from all over the world, and it became kind of a multicultural area. They opened up to people. If someone was in need, they cared for them. Healthcare was established. If a person had a personal need, they would help them. We overcame our issues by changing civil laws and accepting other people. And now it's changed. America has become a police state. We used to be the world's a very great nation in the world. Now we're like 10th in education. We spend the most on military budget and the least on education. The world is a changing place. The dollar is more and more taking dominance in everything. And those morals that we used to live by are slowly fading. And perhaps that's where religion steps in and says, no, let's keep these morals living, let's establish them and not get them to fade.
As Muslims, we follow the one path of the Holy Prophet, who was an exemplary leader. Why then do we see such bad leadership today in the Muslim world?
Well, the Prophet was a man who, if you look at him in Arabia, was not motivated by any source of power. Let's speak very objectively here for a minute about the Prophet himself, right? Put the fact aside that he was, as the Muslim belief, he was a infallible human being, who was a man who cannot make mistakes or did not make mistakes. He can, but he did not because God divinely guided him. Let's put that aside for a second and speak very objectively about his character. The Prophet's character was a character which was never influenced by any means or source of power, but was really an influence of equality amongst the people. When the Prophet was about 25, he's very young. Mind you, Arabia doesn't know him very well then. He hadn't really established a name. By 27 or 28, he was called As-Sadiq al-Amin, the trustworthy, the honest. And at the age of 25, as a very young man, he established something called Hilf al-Fudul, which is the pact of justice. And this is really the first moral stance, or very big moral stance that the Prophet takes part in Arabia. Mind you, the Prophet was about 25. This pact was started by the brother of Khadija. Khadija's brother came and realized there's no trading rights for traders in Arabia. Arabians have no rights. Anybody who comes to trade is getting his money stolen, or is getting bombarded with killings and a lot of thieves which were around, and they had no rights. So at the age of 25, the Prophet and 20 other members within Quraysh signed a treaty called the Pact of Justice, and that pact was meant to safeguard the rights of those who have come to trade. And that was just the beginning of his career. Up before he was even to be called a prophet, his stances were phenomenal when it comes to human rights, right? The Prophet would see young children and would feed them. The Prophet was a man who would come and intrinsically help other people. When he was about 27 or 28, when he was leading Khadija's caravans to Yemen and to Sham, to Syria, people knew him as a Sadiq al-Amin. The merchants of Khadija would say to her that Muhammad's honesty is something that we've never seen something like. Muhammad never lies to anyone. If Muhammad has dates that are old, he will take those dates and substitute them for new dates because those are very old. As a young man, his reflection on that society, and you have to remember, he was born in an area which allowed him to be a free thinker. He was raised in the desert. He was born in a kind of a metropolitan city because Mecca was kind of a trader's post, but he grew up in the desert, and that allowed him to be an open-minded thinker. At the time, the idols were not just religious signs, they were political and economic signs. The idols were today's modern superpowers which are trying to control the world. The idols which were led by Abu Jahl, Abu Sufyan, Abu Lahab, these were the main head honchos, Umayyah, head honchos in Arabia. These people controlled the masses through the idols. They made people worship the idols, they made people fall in love with the idols, and the idols really became the source of power for these men. When the Prophet came, his message wasn't, oh people, come follow a religion that I want to give you. No. His message was break down the idols because they are what control you. They are your modern day dollar. They are your modern day positions of power. They are making the people slaves. And when he came, one of the most symbolic acts is when he walked into Mecca with an army of 10,000 and without killing a single human being, opened Mecca and forgave the own killer of his uncle, Hamza Wahshi. He comes into the Kaaba and he immediately with his cane breaks all the statues, symbolizing the people that the political powers that control you, that have dominance over you, are now destroyed and they no longer have control over you. So be free human beings. The Prophet's message was always self-guided. We can say he was the culmination of that society's greatness put into one man. He was a true humanitarian. One issue that we have today is we've got leaders who just are not moral. They are not telling the truth. I'll give you an example. The NSA spying was happening for a very long time in America, and no one said a single word. Right? President Obama never came out to say a word. Other politicians never said anything. It was up to one honest individual like Snowden, who with the help of a lawyer and a journalist, Grant Greenwald, when they came out and said, look, there's an issue, there's a complete spying system that's happening to the American people. It took two honest journalists and one man who worked for the FBI to come out and say, look, we need some sort of honesty in order for us to come forward and to bring change to the people. Because the NSA spying was people were being spied on everywhere. Their houses were being tapped, their computers were being tapped, their phones were being tapped, and that was just not ethical because everything was policed. But the government never said anything. The leaders never said anything. It's just a case of unethical human beings who are coming into power and not ethically acting with people. We've got such situations in the time of, for example, Ali ibn Abi Talib, the cousin of the Prophet Muhammad, this man in the time of his Khilafah, he was so rich, he could have done anything with his money. Yet he decided to live such a feeble life. He lived in a house where when he would stand, his head would hit the roof. He lived in a house where when it was time for him to break his fast, he ate a piece of bread and yogurt, or a piece of bread and salt. Very simple living, because he acknowledged and realized people were poor and he needed to help them. There are some countries in the world today where people are so poor and the leaders just sit back and do nothing about it. They're more interested in their thrones, and they're more interested in their wealth than actually helping the people. And I guess it goes back to being honest to ourselves and being real to ourselves. And in comparison to the Prophet, today's modern leaders have much to do. Mind you, we do see some leaders who are very moral, who will come out and completely boycott a country for bombarding other countries with the bombs. We see, for example, some leaders who are very moral. They will stand up to big superpowers and say, no, we have the right to do this and to do that. And my hat's off to those, because they need to break the power struggle and they need to break the power chain from this police state that's being created.
Leaders are corrupt. What about Muslim people in Muslim countries? Why don't we see them marching or protesting?
Well, you know, there's a couple of things we can do. But before I get into that, you know, there's an idea that it's the people's fault. And we kind of, you know, sometimes we tend to leave governments out of it. As much as governments, the people are at risk and the people are at fault, at the end of the day, it's the governments which control these things. Within the region, there's been a constant brainwashing or dehumanization of people. And it happens from both sides, but there's strong dehumanization against a specific sect, the Shia sect. You always hear these things where, you know, they are kuffar. They are not humans. They're not believers. They deserve to be killed. You've got ISIS who comes up and says, you know, killing a Shia will send you straight to heaven. This educational system needs to end. This complete segregation and demoralization and putting down of a group of people. I don't care what your beliefs is. You have the right to be living in the 21st century and to believe what you want to believe. I don't care what you believe. I mean, we've come as a level of human beings from the state of not, you know, accepting certain people, and we've reached a level where certain people are now accepted, whether it comes to their gender preferences, or it comes to their religious preferences, or etc. We have overcome those boundaries that we have, and this idea of criminalizing and a slow desensitization to a group of people, destroying their holy lands, destroying their holy sites, putting down their beliefs, treating them as if they're not humans, is just outright wrong, and the scholars need to do something about it. We're talking about the top scholars who are in control of certain schools within that region need to come out and say there's an issue. This killing and this humanization is something wrong, right? If a group of Shiites were to invade any country in the world today, you know, our scholars would be the first to come out and say there's a problem with this. And we expect this from the other side. We can't just have our brothers being killed in Qatar, in Iraq, Gaza, in these different areas. And we're talking in certain areas which are Shia. I mean, Sunnis and Shias are being killed alike today in Iraq. Mind you, it's not just a Shia war, but we're talking specifically about this issue. A cry needs to be heard. Our brothers are being killed everywhere. The scholars need to come out and make an issue. I really believe in the power of social media. If young people can come out and use social media and tweet and create protests and create, you know, a stance against something, change will happen. Change will definitely happen. We just need to create awareness. Most people are stuck in a loop of ignorance. They just do not know. People literally think that they are right and everyone else is wrong. That is the worst mentality that any religion can have. I don't care if you're Shia, Sunni, Christian, Hindu, Muslim, it doesn't matter. That is the worst mentality to have. I'm wrong and everyone else is wrong. Or I'm right and you're wrong. And you know, you will enter hell and I will enter heaven, and let me speed in how fast you will get to hell by killing you. That's a very wrong mentality.
Who is ISIS?
America's had a lot of Frankenstein children, as we can say. What we do is this is the way our foreign policy works, and it's a very sad foreign policy. In order for us to you know, bring down another nation, we will create military groups in order for us to benefit. So for example, Al-Qaeda was created in order for them to fight the Soviet Union. You know, Bin Laden is an American invention. Al-Qaeda is an American invention. It's all American created. And in order for us to really understand it, we need to go back to that. What's happening, you know, after Al-Qaeda was created, America completely lost control. The Taliban was created. And then what you had happening was the strong Wahhabi movement, or the strong movement of religious extremism, which took a group of people from these different areas and immediately send them to Syria and those different places. These are all Qaeda based. These are individuals who then started brainwashing people who are from Britain, from America, and they started coming to Syria and fighting alongside the so-called revolution that we happen. Even though we know that when people cause a revolution, they don't kill, butcher, massacre, rape, take videos of killing people, of eating people's livers and putting them online. This is not a revolution. Revolutions don't happen this way, and if they do, they're most likely never successful. So what happened is between Jabhat al-Nusra, which was a very strong terrorist organization, which was really leading the front in Syria. Mind you, this Jabhat al-Nusra is funded by America. They were visited by John McCain numerous times. They were given a lot of aid. A lot of money was pumped to them. It was quite obvious, quite clear. And when the whole chemical weapons thing happened in Syria, America was very ready to strike Bashar al-Assad, because it's very obvious which side they're on. Because they created and they funded this child, and you know, people were sent from Europe, from America over, you know, to fight. Most of their people are non-Muslims who became so-called Muslims or freedom fighters. Even some women joined them. When that happened, there was a rift that was created in Nusra, where a group of people split from them, and that was a creation of Daesh. Daesh is actually an offshoot of Jabhat al-Nusra. They are an offshoot of people from Chile, Europe, South America, North America, people who are a group who want to establish an Islamic caliphate in the area of the Levant. And the area of the Levant is modern-day Syria, Iraq, northern parts of Iraq, obviously, Lebanon. This is known as the area of the Levant. And that's really their goal. So Daesh came in as a terrorist group, which is an offshoot of al-Nusra, which is a Frankenstein child of America, which they never expected, right? So it was just an offshoot. That's what happens when you create terrorist organizations. They start having their own brains and they want to do their own things. So they came into Mosul, and people in Mosul literally just dropped their weapons and walked away. They just left. And what they did is they played the Shia-Sunni game. Even though they butchered Sunnis, they butchered Christians, and they butchered Shia. They went into Mosul, they stole about $450 million. They are now the richest terrorist group in the world. They stole $450 million from the Mosul banks, and equipment and money, and all of that. And so Daesh really is a Frankenstein creation, and now the Iraqi people have to deal with it. Now the Iraqi people have to put up arms. God knows how many people are going to be killed in the process. Millions of people who have already died, and a lot more will be killed, because it's not easy to remove someone like that from your country. It's not very easy to just kick them out in one day. Hopefully that will be something that will happen, but this idea of an Islamic caliphate is not even Islamic. They take videos of killing, you know, women, rape, genital mutilation, all these things. It's just the things they do are so un-Islamic. Islam is so far away from them. And they play the sectarian game when it's got nothing to do with sectarianism. It's not a Shia issue, because Shias are killed. Not a Sunni issue, because Sunnis are killed. Not a Christian issue, because Christians are killed. It is just an issue that these people do not see the humanity of others, and they will do anything to get their way and get power. And that's really the situation with ISIS.
How can the Arabian and Muslim Ummah overcome these problems and rise again as a force?
Our Arab world is we have, you know, systematically been divided, and been told to fear the consequences because of the fear of A, the Arab Spring, and B, the division, the invasion of ISIS, America going into certain countries. There is a strong fear amongst, you know, the cowardly Arab countries, very cowardly Arab countries, that if something happens, if uprisings happen, if protests happen, then they immediately need to be shut down. And we're scared of that sense. I mean, Saudi Arabia, if there's a protest that happens, they immediately crack down on it. You've got people who are put in prison, politicians who are put in prison, people who are shot with rubber bullets. It happens all the time because there's this idea of being scared of protests, even if it's protesting for the right thing. And Arab countries are really very, very cowardly in their ways. If they don't stand up for themselves, which typically they don't, they will not stand up for anybody else because there's a lot of money involved. There's a lot of money involved from the side of Israel, and there's an alliance. There's that, you know, the Saudi alliance with Israel and these countries to defend them, because at the end of the day there is that trio of alliance. Iran plays a big part in the sense that if Saudi Arabia takes that role, takes it upon themselves to defend Gaza, they're taking some sort of alliance, helping another Muslim country, and for them that's something unheard. For them that's something that they typically don't stand for. But there is a fear in the Arab world that if we do, then there is going to be protests, there are going to be issues, there are things that are going to come up. People are just scared. We need to build that awareness in the people. And our social media can be limited to us, but we have to send that awareness to these Arab countries. We need to reach out to them and say, look, there's a problem here, you need to stand. Saudi, Qatar, all these different, you know, countries, we have to reach out to them through our own means, through Twitter, through social media, through video. Remember, their dominant language over there is Arabic. A lot of things we do here is in English. There might be that barrier gap, and if we don't reach out to them and build awareness among the people, it's going to be very hard for them to stand, because their government really cracked down on them, especially after the Arab Spring.
Do you think the events which have taken place in Palestine are bringing Muslims together, and is kind of like a slap to ISIS and Western ideology of divide and rule?
Well, I really believe that genuinely we are not united. And when I say genuinely, I mean we wholeheartedly. If we wholeheartedly overcame our egos and thought to each other or to ourselves that this person in front of me is not better than me, I am not better than them based on belief, they are not better than me based on belief, then the media would not have anything against us. When the media comes in, is we have specific people who are infiltrating our faiths and cursing and sending la'na, for example, and criticizing and condemning other people. I mean, it's reached such a level that we take praised and holy personalities to another sect of Muslims, and we completely destroy and desecrate their understanding of who they are. How would a person feel if their religious figure is desecrated by someone else? God in the Quran says, do not even curse their idols, lest they come back and curse your God. God is saying in the Quran that don't even curse idols. You're talking about another human being. There's a very lack of genuineness, which is, I genuinely believe this person is not as bad as people would make him to be, or I genuinely believe I'm not better than this person. If it doesn't come off as genuine, the media sees right through it, and it picks up that hatred, it picks up that tone, and we have people who come out of the media and say, you know, la'na on this person or la'na on that person. Plus, there's a lot of anger right now. There's a lot of anger in the air, you know, specifically from Iraq. It's so easy to generalize. Generalization is the biggest thing that we do. We'll take a group of people and say all Sunnis are this way. No, I've met many Sunni brothers and sisters who are phenomenal human beings who do more political work than some Shias themselves. And I've seen some Shias who are great people. We are not limited to a group of people to our religion. Imam Ali, you know, has a beautiful hadith, and he says, if a person is not your brother in faith, he is your equal in humanity. Before anyone is our brothers or sisters in faith, they're equal to us in humanity. The Quran comes with a beautiful verse and says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha, wa ja'alnakum shu'uban wa qaba'ila lita'arafu, inna akramakum 'inda Allah atqakum. We have created you from male and female and tribes in order for you to get to know each other, not to separate, not to be different. I can have my belief, you can have your belief, but at the end of the day, we respect each other and not tolerate. The problem with the Muslim world is we tolerate each other. We talk to each other, but we talk to each other with black hearts. We talk to each other with hearts that say, yeah, I'm talking to you, but I know you're wrong and I'm right. Deep down, I don't genuinely believe that, hey, there might be a truth out there different to mine. And unless we overcome that ego, that centrism to religion, I'm right and everyone else is wrong, then we'll never get anywhere. And we will still point the finger and say, you're wrong and I'm right. And we still, you know, it's interesting, sometimes I think about it. I imagine as if you know, God created the universe and really invested cents in us, because we are so, you know, small and meager. And he says to Jibreel, you know, we've created so much. What are these Muslims doing? What is the world doing? And he said to him, you know, oh God, you know, they're just fighting about you still. They're still fighting about you, whether you're called this or that. They haven't really, you know, focused on the issue. We've been fighting over the messenger for so long, we've forgotten the message. We've been fighting over his companions for so long, we've forgotten the message of love and kindness that he's brought forward. And unless we put that aside and start seeing each other as human beings and take the current issues into hand as the main thing that we need to focus on, we will never move forward. And the media is very good at separating us. And let's be honest, they use what we give them to separate us. If we don't give them anything, they have nothing to use.
Unfortunately, Brother Ali, we've run out of time. Thank you very much for sharing your knowledge with us.
Well, thank you for having me on the show. It's been a complete pleasure to be here. Thank you once again.
And thank you very much for watching Beneath the Surface. See you next time.